you were talking about challenges I faced, well, I was assigned male at birth, and that, dare I say, can lead to a challenge if your sense of identity is as female. People are assigned at birth based on their body, and then we expect them to have a certain gender identity and expression. It's trying to survive 13 years at an all-boys school when I was not a masculine, sporty, competitive, academically type of male, which I never was a male anyway, of course. I'd put up a lot of walls around myself to survive. It was the only way to get through. Into my 30th year, someone finally defined the sort of woman I was and gave the word and a definition of, as it was then, transgender, now trans and gender diverse. After having this feeling for 29 and a half years, there was something in inverted commas wrong with me. Oh, hang on, no, it's just that I'm a bit different to what people expected. And I had this huge piece of jigsaw fit everything together. Oh, that's why I hadn't fitted in at that school. That's why I hadn't really felt I'd progressed anywhere in life, in career or relationships, because there was this big ball and chain that was holding me back. And having got rid of the ball and chain, that was a wrong assumption that I couldn't be anything other than male, that I could be someone different, started life going in the right direction. And so gradually, as I began to move forward in life and found the right people to be with and the right places to be in, I realised I was trying to move forward and metaphorically bumping into the walls. I had to take down those walls to some extent and realise that it was okay to reach out. But when having faced a large amount of abandonment, rejection, ridicule because of that, and started working through that, but it also blocked me from having a lot of relationships of all sorts, intimate, friendship. But I suppose underneath that, there was some degree of emotional abandonment from family. My family of origin were and still largely aren't great communicators and that sort of thing. And so it's still working through that. So you keep sort of digging through a layer thinking, oh, I've cleaned out the psychological junkyard now, and then there's another layer. There was a critical moment in about 2004 where I worked with a life coach, and of course you set your goals in 3 areas, but the critical part is what you learn about yourself about halfway through, and life coach is being set up to say, is it okay if I give you some feedback? And I said, sure. And she said, do you realise you have a very glass half empty view of the world? And I hadn't realised it. Understandable, of course, no judgment, fair enough. It was like, oh. And it was probably the first time I had a sense of, well, hope or faith or trust that the world could be okay rather than just being ultra struggle. There's a lot of trans people understandably do the world sort of against you, you don't fit. And it can be very hard to believe, well, it can be okay. I can get a vision of what my life would be like if, there was a clean slate. The denial factor, I think, is a huge stereotype and form of prejudice for trans women and probably lots of other groups. Well, there's men and there's women and that's it. And it's like, no, there's about 7.4 billion genders as far as I'm concerned. Even if people begrudgingly accept binary trans people, then there's, well, you've got to be one or the other. The only real trans people are those trans women who have surgery, or that you've got to blend in and look a certain feminine way. It's too challenging for people. Well, hey, okay, you've got a right to be challenged, but you don't have a right to damage our lives with those stereotypes and prejudices and denial. Invisibility is a stereotype. You see someone who appears to be male walking down the street with someone who's female and you think, well, they're both heterosexual. Well, one or both of them could be bi. So there's a form of bi stereotyping as well. Imagine if we stopped limiting people. We just have a vastly different society that would be much more positive and have more innovation. We need to find a way to hold space for all those intersections and remember that everyone is an individual. Due to family upbringing and the other things, I became very passive and wouldn't speak up for myself, which may be surprising if people know some of my background as an advocate. I did begin to stand up for myself more and not let people dump the anger on me and get rid of some of the stuff they'd put in me. It's meant I have become more assertive, but of course, sadly, we live in a society that totally erroneously says females have to be totally quiet, passive and submissive as defined by males on a lot of occasions. And unfortunately, a few of my male friends from earlier in life who, whether they realised it or not, were probably seeing me as a convenient butt of their jokes, can't handle that. And unfortunately, we've lost a lot of that connection. And in that sense, that's where there's been a lot of unlearning to do, that I don't have to have anyone in my life if they can't treat me with equality and respect. In the end, you've got to be true to yourself, got to work out where your own truth is first and start from there and try to stick with it. Whilst overall we have made some progress in the last 3 or 4 years, most of the visibility is still with trans women, the ones who get talked about, Laverne Cox, Caitlyn Jenner, Kate McGregor. But then as someone who goes out and does diversity education, we say, name some trans men. And you'll usually get Sonny and Cher's kid, Chaz Bono, fine. And then you go, okay, name some others. And once in a while you'll get Stephen Beattie, and then you go further, and that's where it ends. And I do feel for my trans brothers in that way. Interestingly, gender diverse, although there's still a very binary thinking in society, people like Ruby Rose and Miley Cyrus have almost got more coverage in a way. And so that's an issue, is within the trans community, but intersections with physical, intellectual, mental disability, we're only just, I think, scratching the surface on that. I just hope I can be the best, say, ally that I can be to, say, trans people of colour. To me, I keep that simple. There's a saying, do unto others as they would do unto you. I think we can go even better than that and just say, what would you like me to do? But I take it further and say, what would you not like me to do as well? And I think we need to be careful about that. I think there's this tendency to think that we have to help people. Blah. No, just say, what would you like us to do? How can we be an ally? What does that involve? Because people have their own solutions. We're all, in the end, I think, trying to achieve the same things. We want to achieve our potential, be happy, healthy, have some degree of wealth and security. We're all taking different paths to get there. All the paths are valid if they don't harm anyone else. So I think if there are 1 or 2 things people could do, it's communication and just try to keep learning. If you know that you don't know, that's okay. Find information or say to someone from the particular group, look, I don't want to hassle you too much. Can you point me to a few good sites where I can get some resources? And then if I've got questions, I'll come back to you. And I don't think that's too hard. It comes back to basics of dignity and respect. And if, to me, one of the rudest things you can do to someone is not listen to them. If you're not listening to a whole group of people who share similar views, then that's a pretty negative thing to do. As a friend of mine with a dry sense of humour on Transgender Victoria's committee says, it's nice to be nice. And I think we can just do that. Just show that basic respect by listening and then being a true ally to groups of people. We'd move forward, I think, more quickly, maybe more quickly than we'd realise.